Hello and welcome to this video about the daily check for Catalyst systems. For the demo in this video, we chose a Catalyst Plus HD system, but the daily check procedure is the same for all the classic Catalyst HD systems. For Catalyst single camera solution, however, there is a slight difference in the behavior of the Isocenter adjustment, which I will explain later in this video. The purpose of the daily check operation is to check for any deviation or drift of the system's Isocenter compared to the laser Isocenter in the past 20 hours. Now, you are right if you say that the laser Isocenter is not necessarily the radiation or imaging Isocenter. To align the Catalyst system to the radiation Isocenter, we perform another QA step that involves the Quasar Pentaguide Phantom. There is another video that explains this so-called routine QA procedure. Back to the daily check procedure. First, and this is valid for all Catalyst systems, we need to make sure that the system is on its right operating temperature. Therefore, I recommend you to first turn on the C4D software, switch to the clinical mode and open the QA mode so that the Catalyst system begins to project its light pattern. This warms up the system faster than in standby mode. For a system that was completely shut down overnight, it is recommended to leave the system projecting for about 15 minutes prior to any daily check procedure. You can perform other Linac daily QA in the meanwhile, of course, but since we do not want to waste your time waiting for Catalyst, we introduced a warm-up feature in C4D version 6.1.2 Service Pack 1. That automatically warms up your system before your operating hours and also keeps it warm during the set times. Mind that this only applies to Catalyst Plus, and the classic Catalyst still should be warmed up manually, as already mentioned. As soon as we started the QA mode in C4D, we can put the spherical phantom in place. The reason for having 3 spheres is basically that we have up to 3 cameras in the room that all need to determine the correct in-room depth, where a spherical surface is beneficial over a flat surface to accurately determine the correct 3D shape. The correct orientation of the phantom is critical. Make sure to have the round side of the phantom's base pointing towards your middle Catalyst scanner, or the center sphere next to the spirit level, pointing towards your gantry. Then make sure that all room lasers are aligned with the corresponding markers on the phantom, where the center cross for longitudinal and lateral displacement should be prioritized over the markers on the side. The vertical alignment markers can be found on the sphere directly. When our phantom is in place, we move over back to the C4D software. Here we simply click the Check button and C4D automatically checks all 3 scanners. A series of 5 3D surfaces for each Catalyst scanner is combined to one final image, which is then compared to a mathematical reference of the phantom. The actual daily check procedure with image acquisition and Isocenter calculation takes just a few moments. The result is a simple OK statement for each scanner if the result is within tolerance. The tolerance is 1 mm for translations and 1 degree for rotation. The total deviation can basically be ignored with Catalyst HD systems. The active tolerance remains 1 mm. Note here that Catalyst uses a different, rigid registration algorithm for its QA procedures, since the phantom is not deformable. Should the system's Isocenter be outside of tolerance, Catalyst reports this as, you guessed it, outside tolerance. This is again reported for each scanning unit. Furthermore, C4D warns that a routine QA for a new calibration shall be performed. Before we take this step, we'll have a detailed look into each individual scanner to see which axis is actually off. Simply click on left, mid or right to see the specific axis values displayed. Doing this, we see that the Z-axis is off by more than 1 mm into the negative direction for all 3 Catalyst scanners. X, Y and Z are synonymous for longitudinal, lateral and vertical. The coordinate system follows the same directions as the setup or treatment mode of catalyst. So -C means that the current isocenter, or in other words the position of the phantom, is lower than we expected. So the phantom needs to be slightly elevated. And of course, before we perform a actual calibration step, we should double check the phantom's position to make sure it's correctly aligned. And in fact, surprisingly, we see a mismatch with the vertical laser line, so Catalyst wasn't so wrong after all. After correcting the position, we just click the check button again and the values are updated within seconds. This time the result is inside of the 1 mm tolerance and the daily check is therefore okay. We can save the result in the daily check history by clicking OK. In contrast to Sentinel, the Isocenter is not changed on Catalyst HD platforms after each check, unless you perform an actual calibration. There might be the situation that C4D reports object not recognized. The reason can be quite obvious, namely that the phantom is not correctly rotated, as shown in the example here. Also, one possibility is that the camera settings for the QA procedures are not set appropriately. These are configurable. Please contact CRUD support for further assistance. Anyhow, object not recognized shows that something with the setup of the phantom is incorrect, and you should double check the phantom's position. If the phantom still cannot be recognized, it might mean that the Isocenter shift is too large, possibly caused by someone or something hitting one of the Catalyst scanning units, causing the Isocenter to be displaced. In such case, it might be necessary to recalibrate the system. Again, please get in touch with CRUD support for assistance. In case the daily check is out of tolerance repeatedly, even though the daily check phantom is correctly positioned, you need to perform either a so-called routine QA procedure or an Isocenter adjustment. As mentioned earlier, the routine QA requires the Quasar Pentaguide phantom. But if you do not own that phantom, you can still calibrate the Isocenter, of course. To perform an Isocenter adjustment, first exit C4D and re-log in with administrator user level. Then go to the daily check mode, make sure that the daily check phantom is perfectly aligned and that the Catalyst system is warmed up properly. You can click the check button again to perform the automatic Isocenter measurement. Now, before we close and confirm the QA mode with OK, we expand the view with the yellow arrow and check the little checkbox on the bottom which says Save result as new Isocenter adjustment. This step resets the Isocenter. It will be shifted from its current position by the displayed values, so that it matches with the in-room laser exactly. Performing the daily check again without moving the phantom, we see that the values are now all 0. I have mentioned earlier already that there are other tolerances as well, and you may have noticed the current and total deviation columns in the daily check result. This representation follows the same principle as the daily check for Sentinel, showing the day-to-day Isocenter drift in the current deviation and the overall drift from the last Isocenter adjustment in the total deviation. In other words, the current deviation shows how much the Isocenter has moved since yesterday, or the last daily check, and the total deviation shows the drift since the last time the Isocenter was reset. But since we do not change the position of the Isocenter daily for Catalyst HD systems, the values of current and total deviation always match. And this brings me to our last chapter here in this video, which I call the special features or particularities with the Catalyst QA. Let me explain why we do have these two tolerances, current and total deviation. For technical reasons, it was necessary to distinguish between the daily shift and total shift and to calibrate the Isocenter after every daily check. But also we wanted to make the user error visible that happens naturally when positioning the phantom every day. The current deviation therefore has a tolerance of 1 mm, whereas the total deviation has a tolerance of 3 mm. Thus, the Isocenter is adjusted after every daily check procedure by the values of the current deviation. CRUD is currently working on this to improve the QA procedure for all platforms. Anyhow, This QA behavior only applies to Catalyst single solutions, where we only have one Catalyst scanner installed. For all Catalyst HD systems, instead, once the routine QA is activated, the QA behavior changes to the one we have discussed mainly in this video. To summarize it once more, for all the Catalyst single solutions, the Isocenter is calibrated daily to the phantom's current position. The current deviation values show you how much the Isocenter is shifted since yesterday. The total deviation show you how far the Isocenter is mispositioned from the last Isocenter adjustment procedure. The routine QA procedure is not available on Catalyst single solutions. And again, for all Catalyst HD systems, the active daily check tolerance is 1 mm, and the Isocenter is not adjusted daily, but only verified. If you want or need to adjust the Isocenter, perform an Isocenter adjustment or a routine QA, if you owe the Penta guide. For both, you need to log in with administrator level. If you do not see the option for the routine QA, that's the magnifying glass button next to the daily check, please contact C-Rod support to help you activating this. This was the Catalyst Daily Check. If you have further questions or suggestions for improvement, please contact us under support@crod.com or get in touch with our service personnel directly.